Hello and welcome back to The Power to Flourish. Here we are. Just days before Christmas. How are you feeling? I am imagining you right now. Hopefully you are maybe sipping something warm and cozy. Maybe you're listening to this as you're wrapping gifts and listening to some fun holiday music, or maybe you're driving somewhere, or maybe you're just taking a quiet little moment to yourself. Whatever you find yourself doing today, I hope that this episode just gives you that nice little moment to pause and take something in for yourself, especially in this busy season. So today I want to teach into something that is incredibly important for our well-being as women, especially this week. It's just on my mind, and it's something that I think many of us struggle with. I know I have, and it is the art of receiving. Not necessarily receiving physical gifts, although you may struggle with that too, but receiving care, receiving help, receiving support, receiving rest, receiving love, receiving God's presence. And at the end, I'm going to guide you through a small grounding exercise. So stay to the very end, especially if you're feeling like you might need something like that today. Just a little moment of receiving that you can carry with you into the rest of this week. Welcome to the Power to Flourish podcast, where science meets the art of a beautiful life. I'm Dr. Andrea Line, positive psychologist, giftedness expert and coach, and modern-day spiritual godmother to brilliant, deep-feeling women. This isn't just another self-help podcast. It's a sanctuary, a sacred space to come back to yourself. Each week, we'll explore the emotional experience of gifted, sensitive women and what it means to live a life that feels as beautiful as it may look. Because flourishing isn't a luxury, it's your birthright, and your life is waiting. This is the Power to Flourish podcast. One thing I see over and over in my work, and you have probably noticed this too, whether that's in yourself or the women around you, is just how many deeply gifted, or we could say highly sensitive, empathic women are wired, it seems, to give. You anticipate needs, right? You're caring for others. Just it feels instinctive. You know how to hold emotional space. You know how to carry responsibility. And you've probably been doing this for a very long time, maybe even since early childhood. And because you've learned to survive in this world, to cope, to navigate hard things in life by giving and by this doing, receiving can oftentimes feel unfamiliar. Or if not unfamiliar, it can feel a bit uncomfortable or maybe very uncomfortable. And for some of you, it downright feels unsafe, which might sound a little weird because why would receiving feel unsafe? But we've all had different experiences that could lead to us falling somewhere on that spectrum. And I do know this intimately because for much of my life, I would say the majority of my life, even today, if I'm being honest, receiving has felt really difficult. It has at certain times felt almost impossible. And I can even remember as a young girl, my mother helping me, trying to coach me to graciously receive compliments. I don't know if you fall into that category yourself. And I do feel like I've made some progress in that area now that I'm decades older, but it's just been this lifelong struggle for me. So I don't know if I fully realized that that was what I was struggling with, but receiving the way I'm conceptualizing it today is definitely something that I have struggled with and I have learned a lot about even in recent years. So one memory that stands out to me as I was reflecting and preparing for this episode was not that long ago. It was back in 2018. I have shared a little bit about this, but I basically felt led that year, early in 2018, to do a medically supervised water fast, which I think I'm actually going to do a whole separate episode or maybe a series on this water fasting experience, because even though it's not specific to gifted women, I think there's just so much that I learned in that experience. But that's not what I'm going to share today. Today, I'm just going to share one part of what was healing for me in that experience. So, first of all, there aren't that many places you can go. And I know today there's a lot of talk about, obviously, fasting and intermittent fasting. And so a lot of people know and are comfortable with the idea of fasting. When I approached my husband in early 2018 and told him what I was thinking I felt led to do, he was concerned, to say the least, and we didn't rush the process. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of learning, as I normally do. And eventually we got to the point later in the fall of that year where I flew from Massachusetts to California, and I checked myself in to a place where they do medically supervised water fasting. I needed to do that because my body was just demanding that level of intervention. And I was hoping to do some just different approaches than going down the path of surgery at that point. So as part of this experience, you had to stay on the premise for the entire time you were there. And for me, I was there a little over a month. So I could not leave that, I was not driving anywhere because it's not safe to do that when you're fasting that long. And part of the water fast is you're resting. So no work, no, nothing that could like stress you out. So I'm just setting the scene so you understand. But part of that whole experience, you're sort of like in what is like an apartment. So you have a room, an apartment, and you're usually sharing that space with, maybe a couple of other people, but I had my own room, and the staff would come in and of course, like clean your room and take care of things like that. But they would also take your laundry every week and wash it and fold it beautifully and then bring it back to you. It's such a simple thing. So, in the big scheme of things, pretty ordinary, you might say, and kind of a small little thing. And I think that act, coupled with the fact that doctors and nurses were coming in every day to check on you and take your vitals and just all of that, I was really being held in a way that was just not normal in my life, because I, at the time, was working, again, I think I've shared this before, in a therapeutic community where I was pouring out and taking care of everyone with big needs every day for years and years and years. And so I just was not used to being in a place where the roles were reversed, and I was the quote unquote patient, and I was being taken care of in a very physical, practical way. And I remember this one day, and this sweet woman came into my room and brought in the laundry and like put it on the dresser, was putting it aside for me and asking me what I needed in the bathroom or whatever. And I remember after she left just crying because I couldn't believe that in all my life. Now, of course, my mother did my laundry when I was a little girl, but I was the oldest of 4, and I was super responsible. I was just like that kind of kid. And then compounded by the fact that I was the oldest of 4. So then I also, grew up kind of quickly in terms of responsibility. And then I was a single mom carrying it all for a long, long time. By this point, by 2018, oh gosh, my daughter was born in 1997. So like she was off at college. So you can imagine, like, it had been decades of me taking care of everyone else. And even though I was married at that point, and goodness knows my husband is very caring and supportive, there was just something, I think if you're a woman, you understand, like, unless you have a really unique, different kind of human that you're married to, like my husband's not necessarily like coming in and doing my laundry and cleaning the bathroom and waiting on me hand and foot, right? Like that's not normal life. So here I am in this situation that is not normal life. And I just was like in tears. I was just so moved. And I felt my heart like healing because I felt like the word I would use and the word that I told my doctor later, and this is in no way to disrespect my own mother at all when I say this, but I felt like I was being deeply mothered and deeply cared for in a way that, gosh, I did not realize I needed to learn to do how to receive that. So that was a like turning point. Not that I had never received care from people before. Of course I had. Of course, in different ways, people have stepped up. And I don't mean to, again, disregard all the things that people have done for me in years past. But this was such just an unusual moment. And I also felt very weak. I mean, I was water fasting. So I think just the whole thing was, I was physically weak. Like I couldn't do a lot because I was just living on water. And I was going through, you just go through a lot emotionally and spiritually and physically when you're going through something like that. That's hence why another episode for all of that. You're probably wondering like, how long did you fast? It's a long time. But I didn't realize just how deeply I had longed for that total surrender and letting other people take care of me. And it cracked something open in me. It was like I was allowing myself to really receive without guilt, without feeling like I owe this person, without feeling like I have to earn it, without apologizing. Like I finally, in that moment, I had to receive. It was so healing. It was just so deeply, deeply healing for me. And it wasn't that long ago. One of the ways I looked it up, sort of, there's a million definitions out there of receiving, but here's one definition. It's the process of taking something that is given, offered, or sent, and can also be a mental or emotional state of openness. It involves accepting gifts, support, ideas, or sensations with an attitude of receptivity, which requires, here's a big thing, ding, 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 vulnerability, trust, and gratitude. So I think, just reflecting on that requires vulnerability, trust, and gratitude. I think for many of us, this act of receiving, and again, you may not struggle with this, which is great. You can skip to the next episode or share this, send it to a friend who struggles with this. But I know for many of us women, we do feel guilty at times receiving things. What is that about? Like, we have no problem giving to others. It feels good to give, but it is this vulnerable place to receive, really receive, without this thing in our head of like, oh, now we need to give back to them somehow, or we owe them something, or right? Like really receiving is receiving with gratitude. The end. End of story, period, right? That's it. And when we allow ourselves to do it, when we allow ourselves to actually receive in that way, our bodies soften. That is exactly what I felt in that experience I just described. Our nervous systems begin to regulate at another level. We feel more connected. And that's part of our nervous system regulation getting, it's like gets, it's like in my head, I'm thinking it's like it gets mended up somehow. We stop needing to overfunction. We experience that level of repair, like I said, even when we may not, it's not even digging up like, oh, what was the trauma or what was the specific thing from my childhood? It doesn't really matter. I don't mean to dismiss certain things, and I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but sometimes when we have a healing experience, we just receive it. We don't need to go and overanalyze everything in our life and figure out, like connect all the dots. Like as gifted women, sometimes we feel like we need to do that. You don't. You don't. You can just receive and allow that healing and that repair to happen. And when we do that, we can then begin to trust on deeper levels. Not that we don't trust, but it's like a deepening of the trust. And from that place of deepening trust, deepening connection, and that, again, deeper level of nervous system regulation, we flourish. We're steadied, we're connected, we're deeply connected, and we can give. And this is a big thing that I learned after all of this sort of experience for me. That flow of giving and receiving is much more fluid, which is the healthy way to do it. I mean, I think I was giving and giving, and clearly, because I got to that point of burnout, I was not allowing myself to receive enough. I was pouring out more than I was receiving. And, we all just know the physics of that. That doesn't work. You can't keep pouring out without filling back up. And I was trying to fill back up, but I clearly wasn't doing it enough. So it's just really important that circulation of love, that's what I like to think of it as. It's that giving and receiving. The circulation of it is what keeps us whole and functioning and flourishing in a sustainable way. I wanted to share another example, and I'll probably cry. I'm sure I will, because receiving, I just gave that example of like receiving like really practical help or practical love. Like I love my husband comes in almost every morning and he makes coffee and then brings me coffee in bed, which is so delightful because I'm not really a morning person. Like I've learned to receive that. It's such a gift, and that that's his way of like showing love to me. It's, his active service, love to me. But receiving also is this and can be this deeply spiritual experience. So taking it beyond like just sort of like the normal, what we kind of think of giving, receiving in the natural realm. And there are these special kinds of moments, these receiving moments that really shift and can transform us on a soul level if we are open to receiving, like really open, right? Open, and that place of openness, but also that openness is sort of vulnerable because we can't have our guard up in order to receive. That's a big thing. I think earlier in my life, I had my guard up so much that it was hard to actually receive. And I had one of these profound moments. It's probably going to rank up there, honestly, as one of the most profound moments of receiving, like in my life to date. And maybe, like, who knows? I have hopefully many decades to live after this. But so far, in 2025, on April 8th, my granddaughter was born. And I had the gift of being there with my daughter during labor and in the delivery room, right alongside her, and watching my daughter give birth to her own daughter. This beautiful, tiny little life. Oh, gosh. I knew I couldn't get through it without crying because it's still so fresh. And after baby Faye was born, and her parents got to hold her and have all their skin to skin contact moments. And I took pictures and everything was so beautiful and so, so beautiful. And so peaceful. It was such a peaceful birth. I don't know how else to describe it. The atmosphere in the room was just so beautiful and full of peace is the only way I can describe how it was like. It was just unlike anything I had ever really experienced. And in that atmosphere, after they had time with her, they, someone, I can't remember, must have been Daddy, placed her in my hands. And in that moment, I felt like I was receiving something so profound. It's really hard to put it into words because I think every grandparent, they say it's like, the best thing in the world to become a grandparent. And absolutely, it is so amazing. So amazing. I am so grateful that I get to have this experience. But for me in that moment, there was multiple layers because this wasn't just a baby. This wasn't just this precious baby girl. She was, but, and my daughter's daughter, right? All the things. But she was this blessing and a promise that I felt from God. And it was so deeply healing because for the past 12 years, at least, maybe more, I had been struggling with endometriosis and fibroids and all sorts of really horrible, painful things for years and years and years that got more and more complex and complicated as the years went by. And my husband and I, he had I had my daughter obviously before I got married, and we had always just thought we would have children of our own at some point, and that just wasn't happening. And at the very end of that long, long journey, we decided to move forward with surgery, and I had to have a full, complete, total hysterectomy and remove my everything, just everything. Because there was so much happening in there that was not good. And it was so devastating and obviously heartbreaking for me, for my husband. And I had been praying for years and years, and I don't know how to explain it, but I sensed very deeply that one day I was going to have a little girl in my arms. And I felt like God told me that years ago. I felt like that was his promise. And so I prayed into that. I believed for that. And so I remember when I was like being wheeled out to get the surgery in fall of 2023. I was like, this story isn't turning out the way I thought it was, and the way I believed, and the way I had faith for. Like, this story is just, what's going on with this story? Like, I don't understand. Like, how will I ever have a baby girl in my arms if I don't have a uterus? That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, there's adoption. Obviously, there's other things, but anyway. So that was part of the story. So fast forward now, that was November of 23 when I had the surgery. It was October, almost November of 24 when I found out we were going to have a grandchild. Actually, October. And then I already knew in my heart it was going to be a girl before my daughter knew. I already knew. I was like, oh, this is the baby girl. This is the baby girl that I was promised. Not I. It sounds kind of funny. But this is the baby girl that I felt like God speak to me about. So when I held her for the first time, you can imagine, it was like I was staring into the eyes of this soul that I had prayed about, imagined, knew would be coming into the world at some point. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I knew it was going to happen. And there she was. It was like I was staring into the eyes of someone I had already been communicating with for a long time. So it was that receiving of this gift that came in a way that I didn't imagine. It came in a different way, but it was a gift and a promise that was just put into my hands. And what I felt was more than joy, although deep, deep joy. But it was this sense of redemption. It was restoration. It was just this promise fulfilled in a way I could have never scripted or expected. And honestly, when my daughter told me she was pregnant, I was completely not expecting it. I mean, it took me a minute for my brain to register what she was saying, because it really was not what I was expecting. It was just really one of the deepest experiences of receiving I have ever had. It's wow, so precious. It was just so tender. And it felt like God was just whispering in that moment, like, here, I didn't forget. Receive this. I didn't forget. And those are the receiving moments. They're not always going to be quite so profound, but those moments where you feel like your heart has waited and longed for and wondered, that when it finally happens, when you finally receive the whatever it is, fill in the blank, they touch not just your body and they touch your mind, but this one just touches like this, just touches you in your deepest, innermost parts of your soul, like healing and joy. Oh, that level of receiving is so beautiful and powerful. And life is full of opportunities to receive in this deeper way if we can slow down enough to let ourselves let in the goodness, let in the beauty, let in the promise, let in all the good things that have been stored up for us. So I wanted to talk about this because Christmas is the perfect time to practice receiving. It's the season where love draws near, and you may not celebrate Christmas, or it may not be a priority necessarily in your rhythms and your traditions in your home, but I wanted to slow us all down and remind ourselves what receiving, what the gift of presence, what grace feels like, what healing looks like, and just to give yourself a moment to ask yourself, what if this next year you let yourself receive even more? Receive help, receive slowness, receive beauty, receive rest, receive God's nearness to you, receive even just a breath in a busy day. Sometimes receiving is grand and sacred, like when you're bringing a baby into the world. And sometimes it's often just as simple as letting someone bring you coffee in bed. Both matter, both heal. And I wanted to close today on this episode. Obviously, if you're driving or you're chasing kids around, hopefully you're not chasing kids around while you're listening to this one. But if you don't have a moment to do this, don't close your eyes. But if you are in a place where you can do that, I just wanted to guide you into a gentle receiving practice. My little gift to you this Christmas week. If you're able, just place a hand somewhere that feels grounding. You could put it on your heart or your belly or your chest or just the top of your thighs. If you're sitting, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just soften your gaze and take a slow inhale and a long, soft exhale. Let your shoulders drop and gently say to yourself, or just listen and let these words wash over you. I am allowed to receive. I don't have to hold everything. It's safe to soften. It's safe to be supported. I am held. And take one more slow breath and notice if anything inside has shifted, even just a little. This is what receiving feels like in the body. It's that softness, it's that spaciousness, that presence. How does that feel? You can open your eyes. I hope that served you well in the middle of your day. It's just a little pause. You can do that kind of thing anytime you need it. And I want to thank you for sharing these minutes with me today. But honestly, if you've been tuning in and listening, thank you for being here with me. This is already such a gift, even though this podcast is still pretty young, but I'm so enjoying sharing my heart with you. And I am really grateful that you are carving out time for yourself to be here with me, to let me give, to pour out for you to receive. And trust me, I'm receiving in other places of my life as well. So I can keep coming here every week and pouring out. So as you move through the rest of this week, I hope you will let yourself receive, whether again, it's that just moment of rest, a gift from someone, kindness from someone, a helping hand in the kitchen. And just remember, receiving can be restorative and healing, and it's really love in motion. So with that, Merry Christmas. May you be met with tenderness, peace, and unexpected gifts of grace this season. And until next time, keep flourishing. Thank you for listening to the Power to Flourish podcast. I hope today's conversation left you feeling more seen, more supported, and more deeply connected to yourself. And if this episode resonated, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend? It's one of the best ways to help this work reach the women who need it most. You'll find show notes, links, and resources from today's episode at powertoflourish.com. And now just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not therapy, medical advice, or a substitute for professional support. And listening doesn't make me your therapist or doctor, though if you're looking for a coach, you know where to find me. All right, beautiful one, that's it for now. Until next time, trust yourself, honor your gifts, and keep flourishing.